Wonder why our biggest, most exciting cities just feel, well, broken? Is it just bad luck, or is there something else going on? We're about to tear into a really provocative manifesto that claims our megacities aren't failing by accident. It argues they're the result of a deliberate systemic breakdown. So yeah, let's get right into it. And right off the bat, this analysis does not pull any punches. It calls the whole crisis in our cities a spatial planning crime. Wow, I mean, that's a heavy term, right? It's suggesting this isn't just about traffic jams or a bit of pollution. This is a deliberate mistake with absolutely devastating consequences for people. So, what exactly is a spatial planning crime? Well, according to this, it's the idea that for decades, we're talking a long, long time, the powers that be have intentionally funneled all the jobs, all the development, all the opportunity into just a tiny handful of cities. And what that did was create what the source calls a migration trap. It basically forced millions of people into these overcrowded, totally unsustainable urban pressure cookers. Okay, so to really get how we got here, the manifesto breaks it all down into 4 acts. Act 1, it's called the migration trap, and this is all about understanding the sheer, mind-boggling scale of the problem. Get this, for over 70 years. Just let that sink in for a second. That's multiple generations. For that long, official policy has consistently pumped everything into just a few cities. So instead of spreading the growth out, it was all concentrated, which, basically laid the groundwork for the mess we're in today. And as this slide shows, this wasn't some organic, natural growth. The source calls it a survival shift. Think about it. People weren't necessarily moving for some amazing new life. They were just trying to escape a rural economy that had been totally neglected, only to wind up trapped in these urban centers that were completely unprepared for them. And to put a number on it, just look at a city like Delhi. We're talking about 30 million people crammed into one single geographical bottleneck. And the analysis here is crystal clear. At that level of density, infrastructure doesn't just bend, it completely shatters. All right, that leads us right into the second act, which is where we see how all of this density creates a massive environmental dead end. This is where the cold, hard math of the city really comes into play. And look at this quote. We are operating on a suicidal mathematical model. I mean, that is a chilling thing to read. The argument is that the very formula we use to build our cities isn't just a little off. It's fundamentally, mathematically, self-destructive. It's not a mistake, it's a completely broken equation. And this slide just breaks down that broken formula perfectly. So on one side, you've got the poison. That's our human emissions. As density goes up, this stuff grows exponentially. Then on the other side, you have the antidote, the green spaces, the trees, the resources that absorb all that poison. And what are we doing? We're systematically destroying the antidote to make more room for the poison. It's wild. So here's the bottom line. It's a perfect storm. We're not just polluting more, we're simultaneously removing the planet's ability to clean up after us. The whole absorption to emission ratio is completely upside down, and that makes the problem pretty much permanent and totally out of control. And this brings us to what might be the most provocative part of the whole argument, Act 3. I mean, if the model is so obviously broken, why on earth do we keep following it? Well, according to this source, the answer isn't about our leaders. It's about us. Which leads us to this central, and let's be honest, probably most uncomfortable question. Why does this keep happening? Why do we put up with a system that is so clearly failing us? The manifesto argues that the real answer isn't in some policy document, but in our own collective character. The source introduces this really interesting concept it calls the logic of indolence. It's basically the idea that our small, everyday choices, the little shortcuts we take, the times we avoid going the extra mile, they don't just stay personal. They add up, they accumulate, and they end up forging our collective character as a society. And this slide visualizes what the source calls the reflection law. It's a pretty simple chain of events. It all starts with our own personal shortcuts. That leads to a culture of, collective mediocrity. And that culture, in turn, elects leaders who are a perfect mirror of that mediocrity, a government with absolutely no vision. And this quote really is the core thesis here. A society comfortable with personal mediocrity will always elect a visionless government. The idea is that the state of our cities is just a physical manifestation of the state of our collective soul. At the end of the day, we get the government we expect, and our expectations are set by the standards we hold for ourselves. Okay, so if that's the diagnosis, what's the cure? Well, the final act lays out a pretty radical solution, the scattered city vision. So the manifesto basically presents us with a choice between two futures, which you can see right here. On the left, you've got the pressure cooker city. That's what we have now. But on the right is the alternative, the scattered city, which is a whole network of smaller, self-sustaining urban centers. And the principles behind this vision are actually pretty simple, but they're also profound. First, decentralized development. Just spread it out. Second, scatter the population. And third, and this is the big one, design these new cities so the math finally works, where nature's ability to heal is always, always greater than our ability to pollute. Now look, this is no quick fix. The source is very clear about this. It's a 50-year vision. It's a multi-generational project, right? It starts with a simple policy shift today and hopefully ends half a century from now with a completely rebalanced urban ecosystem. And that brings us to the final and maybe the most challenging question of all. A 50-year vision like this, it needs leaders with real integrity and foresight. But as we just saw, the whole argument is that that kind of leadership can only come from a society that has upgraded its own character first. So the ultimate question isn't really about urban planning, is it? It's about us. Can we demand more from ourselves in order to build the world we actually want to live in?